This week on VGM Monday, it's not quite a game, and it's not quite a boy, it's Game Boy.
VGM Monday.
Welcome to VGM Monday, the weekly podcast about video game music. I'm your host, Mike Byrne. Let's take a trip back to 1989.
Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
The Nintendo Game Boy was first released in Japan in April of 1989, and in America July of 1989. The Game Boy was a huge success and became the best-selling handheld gaming system ever, only to be dethroned by its younger sibling, the Nintendo DS, some years later. And for all of its success, it was probably the weakest hardware available at the time. Pretty darn impressive when you think about it. At the time, it was pretty impressive and amazing to kind of have like a portable NES you could take on the go with you on like family vacations or road trips. Although sacrifices had to be made, graphically, the Game Boy could not do color. Color would be later introduced in newer models, so Nintendo went with the now iconic green and black monochromatic screen. Speaking of screens, game sprites and art were usually bumped up to a larger scale compared to its home console counterpart. This was due to the 47 by 43 millimeter screen. Had to write that down. Sound-wise, the Game Boy has 4 sound channels, 2 square wave, 1 programmable wave, and a noise generator. I won't get much more technical than that, but just for comparison's sake, the NES has 5 channels. So to make music for the Game Boy, composers had 1 less channel to play around with. The best-selling Game Boy game ever is probably just shy of Super Mario Bros. For having the most iconic video game theme. Can you guess what it is? Yes, Tetris, a true system seller if there ever was one, selling well over 30 million copies. It was a big hit with everybody, kids and adults. A lot of the ads I remember seeing at the time were directed mostly towards grown-ups. And of course it wouldn't be Nintendo without Mario. And thus Super Mario Land was born. Super Mario Land 1 and 2 were when Mario games got a little bit weird. Mario fights weird alien bugs, jumps around on Egyptian pyramids, flies a plane for some reason. And Super Mario Land 2 did introduce the world to Wario, who later on became the star of the series, changing it from Super Mario Land to just plain Wario Land. That about does it for all the history I wanted to talk about. Now let's get into some music. We'll go ahead and go into 3 tracks. First off, from Fortified Zone, we have title music. If you don't know what Fortified Zone is, it's kind of just like a Contra, Kari Warriors kind of side-scroller military strongman shooter game. Just one of those generic military shooter. Wasn't horrible, wasn't amazing. Soundtrack was pretty cool. After that, we're going to go right into Final Fantasy The Adventure with a track called In Search of the Sacred Sword. Fun fact, this is not actually a Final Fantasy game. I know when it came out to America, it was billed as Final Fantasy The Adventure, but it was just actually a separate JRPG that Nintendo of America decided to repackage as Final Fantasy because Final Fantasy was a known brand, I guess, and they didn't really want to put a lot of faith in some unknown IP. And after that, we're going to go into Metroid 2, The Return of Samus, with the track called SR388. Really cool track there. So let's have a listen. Even with all of its limitations, the Nintendo Game Boy can still knock it out of the park when it comes to VGM. So that's the end of the episode this week. Thanks so much for listening. If you like the show, make sure to like or subscribe wherever you hear it to, be it on Podbean, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you have any questions or comments for me, you can hit me up on Twitter at VGM Monday. Or if you have any questions or even a suggestion for a future episode, you can send me an email at vgmmonday@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I wanted to just go out with one last song. A little while ago, I think it would have been the last episode, we were talking about Castlevania games for the Game Boy, and I discovered that I really, really like Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge soundtrack. It's probably one of my top 10, definitely Game Boy soundtracks, maybe even VGM soundtracks in general. It's just so... It really blew me away when I first heard it. I'm going to go into another track from Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. The name of the track is going to be New Messiah. Thanks for listening, and see you here again next week.